Hello everyone, Big Clingy here with a video that I felt that I needed to make after I saw some of the reactions to one of my previous episodes. Now, I recorded Chapter 21 and Chapter 22 relatively soon after each other, so at the time I was recording 22, I had not uploaded 21 yet, and I didn't know what the reactions to it would have been, and so I couldn't take into account anything that I saw in the comments there into that video. The next video in the main playthrough is going to be a very, very important chapter, and because of that, I feel like I don't want to waste time there talking about things that happened in Chapter 21, so I'm going to put these all in its own video, because I really have to get this off my chest, and I really feel like there's some things that I really need to say. Most of all, I just want to make an apology. Something that I did, and it specifically relates to the very end of Chapter 21. What I did there was, I took a particular scene from the game, and I put my own spin on it. Now, I had planned to put this spin on it right from the beginning. In fact, years before I had even done this playthrough, because I've planned to cover this game for years. Ever since I first played Awakening, I already had ideas in my head of how I would do this on YouTube. So, this has been years in the making, and there are a few points that I always knew that I'd do. And this version of this scene was one of them. It was an idea that I had a really long time ago, and I basically decided to go with it. Now, this ended up being one of those things that seemed like a good idea at the time, but now that I've seen a few comments, I'm really starting to have a few regrets now, and I'm really, really, really sorry to a lot of viewers who... I can understand why you haven't exactly looked on what I did favourably. Now, I'm not going to spend this video trying to justify myself or anything. I know that there's no way to justify the fact that some of you just... There is no way that you would have been okay with what I did, and I'm fine with that. Everyone has their own views, and I don't want to feel like I'm challenging anyone or anything like that, and I don't want to be, defending myself saying that I was right to do what I did, because now I almost feel like I wasn't. What I do want to do, though, is give a bit of background to what I did, and a bit of background as to what this scene means to me. And here's the thing, and here's the real thing. This is the reason why a lot of you might not have been okay with what I did. This scene, to me, does not mean the same way to me as it does to a lot of people in the Fire Emblem community. And I get this feeling like I feel like a bit of a hypocrite now, because I turned this extremely dramatic scene into sort of a total joke, and yet I deliberately did Chapter 10 with no commentary to preserve the original atmosphere. And looking back, I feel like a total hypocrite now that I ruined this scene and didn't ruin that one. I really should have done what I did there now that I think about it, but here's... okay. Background stuff again. So, Chapter 10 has always stuck out in my mind as a huge emotional moment in this game, and I really wanted to preserve it. Chapter 10, I knew vaguely that there would be a battle in the rain, that it had that sad music. I had listened to Don't Speak Her Name long before the game came out. I mean, I knew it by its Japanese name, Don't You Dare Mock My Sister's Words, for so long. So, and given the Japanese name of it, and the English name as well, I could kinda tell something very bad was going to happen to Emerin. It was fairly obvious. What I didn't know, though, and what really surprised me when I went into it, is the actual reason why that chapter is so sad is not just Emerin's death, it's so much more than that. The fact the enemy soldiers that you're fighting in that chapter, and that you're forced to fight, don't even want to fight you, and actually would be fine, just letting you leave, that really hit me when I first played. I didn't see that coming at all, and it really made me see the entire Pledgian conflict in a very new light, and it had a huge lasting emotional impact on me, and that is why I wanted to preserve the original feel of that scene. Now, a lot of people in the Fire Emblem community especially in the Awakening community, have a similar feel from this scene. This scene here, Lucina's judgment, is generally regarded as one of the most heart-wrenching and emotional moments in this entire game. And here's the thing, okay, and I'm not saying that, I'm saying if you think that way, that is fine, that's fine, but what I want to explain here is, this scene does not hold as much emotional weight for me personally. And the reason for that, there are a few reasons. It's no secret to a lot of you here that I'm not a fan of the Crom and female avatar pairing, and I'm also not a big fan of the Lucina and male avatar pairing. Neither of those pairings ever really appealed to me, and the sheer rabid devotion to some of those in the fan base actually really turned me off them quite heavily, and it also soured me on this scene quite a lot. Again, I'm not saying anyone is wrong for liking those pairings, I'm saying that I personally do not have as big an emotional connection to those pairings as a lot of people do, and because of that, this scene held less emotional weight for me. Now, the other reason, and probably the bigger reason why this scene held less emotional weight for me, is I was spoiled on this scene well ahead of time. Chapter 10 surprised me. I did not expect the emotional impact that it had, and it stuck with me because it was so unexpected. This scene, I was immediately spoiled on this scene. I knew it would happen, I knew the exact specifics of it, and I had watched the scene, all variations of it, in Japanese on YouTube before the game came out. So I already knew, long before I got to this point in the game, I already knew what was coming. In fact, I knew about this scene and all of its full details long before I even knew that it was at the end of Chapter 21. Really, that was the only thing that surprised me, that exactly when it happened. I knew exactly what would happen, I just didn't know when. The other thing about this, though, is, and here's a bit of a confession time, some of you who've I've replied to earlier on might know about this, but this is the thing. When I commentated on that scene during the playthrough, like that, when you saw that video, that was the first time I had ever played through that scene myself. In my first playthrough of the game, I got so over-leveled due to doing DLC and grinding for skills in the children that Chapter 21 was about the point where I just flat out stopped playing because the game was no longer fun. Until I recorded this playthrough, I had never played past Chapter 21 in this game. And that is another reason why this scene doesn't hold as much emotional weight for me, because simply I had never seen it before myself. At least, I'd never played it before. Of course, now I have actually gone through all the remaining chapters on my original file, and I'm up to the end of the game, and have seen all of the spot pass chapters, so yeah, my team was so overleveled that I just marathoned through all of those very quickly. So, I now know the entire content of this final arc of the game. I've now played it all, and I know what to expect. And I actually really liked the final arc. I had never really properly played it before, however, I had read all of the scripts repeatedly, because I have to read the scripts just to get an idea of which boss conversations I need to show off in this game. But yeah, one of the main other factors that contributed to me just quitting the game at Chapter 21 the first time I played is that I had already had every plot twist from then on spoiled for me. I knew literally everything else that happened in the game. And by the way, that's why I am so adamant at avoiding Fate spoilers, because I don't want the same thing that happened with Awakening happening to me again. What happened was, normally in a game when the game is just getting way too easy for me and just every chapter was effortless, there was no risk of losing any characters, I was just so overpowered, I wasn't gaining any experience from story chapters, so normally just learning new skills and leveling up classes is addictive to me, but even that was gone because I didn't gain any experience at all from regular chapters. So, and here's the thing, normally the one thing that would keep me playing a game in that circumstance is the story. I would want to play on to see where the story goes. And there's where I ran into a snag, because I already knew every single bit of story that happened after Chapter 21. Everything had been spoiled for me ahead of time. And so because of that, I've just said, you know what, I see no reason to continue playing. This game is just not fun for me anymore. Now, it might sound to you like I really don't care for this game after that. That's quite the opposite. What happened was, it was due to, again, I played all the DLC as it came out, so I was very high above the level that you're meant to be at this point in the story. My characters at this point were around level 5 in their second run through the classes, so around like level 45, so you're definitely not meant to be that high at this point in the game. Also, at the time, I was kind of right in the middle of by far my most difficult university term that I'd ever gone through. I don't really need to explain it here, but it was really, really tough, incredibly intense, and so I didn't have much time to play this game in my spare time, and I was also busy, thinking about and working on, in the few free moments that I did get, working on the fan translation for Ace Attorney Investigations 2. That took up a lot of my time, so really, there were a lot of factors that contributed to me just quitting playing Awakening the first time, and I'm really glad that I'm now able to give this game a second chance, recording it for all of you, because I'm really enjoying it this time, and speaking of that, enjoying this game and doing it for all of you, this is another reason why I'm starting to regret turning this scene into a joke, and that's because there are a lot of people who are watching these videos who have never seen this game before, who are using these videos as a reference to the game, and I couldn't be happier at that, and it annoys me though that their first exposure to this scene is going to be a joke version. Now, part of the reason why I did that is mostly because I never expected this series to be as popular as it ended up being. Before I did Awakening, I was lucky if many of my videos broke even 100 views. I considered it very, very lucky to have 100 views on a video. And generally, there are only about 5 or so people who ever commented on my videos, so it was very much a niche thing, and I had a lot of in-jokes in my projects. Mary Sue is an avatar was one of them. That started back in Heroes of Light and Shadow. And so I continued it in this game, thinking the people who had stuck with me through that one would find it funny here. And for the most part, those people did. But what I did not expect was that a whole lot of new people would come to my channel, see these videos, and they would become active in commenting and watching these videos. And yeah, this is something that I never thought would happen. I honestly, it's not to say that I didn't really put any effort into this series. I tried to put as much effort into this as I could. I just never expected it to become popular because really, I always thought to myself, I'm simply not lucky enough to become popular on YouTube. That was how I always saw it, and I was kind of fine with that, but these videos seem to have proved me wrong so far. I'm really happy at that, but it was pretty unexpected, and because of that, it's resulted in a few things that I had planned for a long time, in hindsight, might not have worked so well with this new viewer base, and so I am very, very sorry for that. I have considered just going back and uploading a separate version of the end of that video, but using all my original audio and just playing the normal music for that scene over it. But the problem that I find with that is, even without my commentary and without my alternate interpretation and without me turning everything into a complete joke, I still think the scene would be impossible to take seriously with the avatar's name as the name that I've given them in this playthrough. And so I still think that would undercut it quite a lot. My intention was to balance out that thing with including a more serious take of the scene using my avatar from the other playthrough, but that one is, again, no family ties to Lucina at all, and the thing is, that's the way that I like this scene, but the vast majority of people don't. So, it was a bit alienating to some people, and I do sort of see why. Although I have found out recently that there are very few videos on YouTube of the non-married, non-mother version of this scene, so I'm actually a little surprised at that, so at least my video can serve that niche, I guess. Speaking of which, if you want to see the original atmosphere of that scene preserved, there are videos on YouTube of both the Married to Lucina and the Mother version that have no commentary over them, that are just the pure scene and that's it. And I'd highly advise you to look up a few of those, because, yeah, if you feel disappointed by the way I did this scene, those will probably ease some of that. And with that, I just want to get onto the, another whole issue here is the whole Mary Sue thing. Now, Again, I've explained before that me naming the avatar Mary Sue is a running joke that started in my Heroes of Light and Shadow run, where I named the avatar of that game Mary Sue. Now, I got away with that because the avatar in that game has next to no plot relevance or personality at all, so, apart from one side quest, they barely do anything in terms of the story, so I felt like I could get away with just making them just sort of a silly joke character. In this game, though, the avatar does become a lot more plot relevant, but here's the thing. It doesn't really start happening until now. It's not until the third arc of the game that you actually see the avatar have full depth as a character. And, well, the problem with me is, I've never actually played through the third arc of the game before now. So, I didn't know that. To me, the Avatar in Awakening was a bland self-insert Mary Sue and nothing more. And so, I didn't quite realize the full depth that they had. I never really felt a very big attachment to this game's avatar outside of support conversations. They have a lot of supports that I like, but in terms of their impact on the main plot, I basically felt they were just just like the tactician in Fire Emblem 7, only playable, really. They didn't really do much in terms of the story, they didn't have much characterization other than I'm a tactician and I have amnesia. And so, I wasn't a particularly big fan of them as a character. Well, of course I love the fact they're in Smash Brothers, but that's more for gameplay rather than story aspects. I did make sure to point out early on in my first part, I said specifically that by naming the avatar Mary Sue, I was not in any way intending to make fun of anyone who legitimately likes the common female avatar pairing, or the female avatar as a character. I was purely parodying bad fanfiction, and I consider Mary Sue to be a totally separate character from the actual canonical Awakening avatar. The problem is that for fans of that character, I understand that I've undercut a lot of things about this storyline, and I'm starting to feel bad about that now, but it is a bit too late to turn back. Now, note that in Fates, I will not be continuing this. I consider the Fates avatar as their own character and not as a self-insert, so I will be pretty much going with the default name for them and just treating them like they are in the story for the most part. Well, that and I don't even know what they are like in the story because I'm going to be playing those games blind, so, I mean, I'll find out, on the fly, basically. But yeah, with the whole Mary Sue thing, again, some people have kind of accused me of being a little hypocritical when I say that I really don't like all the hate Sumiya gets in the fanbase by Crom and female avatar shippers, but some people have felt like that what I'm doing is the same thing but reversed. I ship Crom and Sumiya, so I'm demonizing the female avatar. That was not my intention at all, and I'm really sorry if it ever came off that way. Again, I consider Mary Sue to be a totally separate character from the actual canonical female avatar. So, this was never my intention, really. This was all just a kind of a joke plotline that I had in my head. And speaking of which, I get the feeling a lot of you are really not going to be a fan of how I planned for this story to end. I won't say any more on this, but let's just say that one of the first things I planned with the whole Mary Sue playthrough is what would happen at the end. I had that planned out right from the beginning. It's an excuse to lead into a certain set of DLC chapters that I want to do. Those are the only DLC chapters I plan to actually take on during the main playthrough, but I needed to lead into them, and I thought of a perfect one, at least to me. The problem is, I get the feeling it might come off in bad taste now, so I am a little worried about going through with that. I have foreshadowed bits of what I did plan to do, and any of you with any kind of savvy will probably have figured it out by now. But I am starting to think that maybe I should revise that. I might still go with a variation of my original plan, but I will try to tone things down a little bit from what I originally planned to do to end this series. Then again, I'm not sure. The thing is, I can't fully discuss it yet because I don't want to spoil it. So, I want to see how the comments react to this, and how the comments have thought, because so far, okay, I got a lot of good comments on my interpretation of Chapter 13. A lot of people seem to find it hilarious, especially how I handled the whole two Mary Sues thing. And I did kind of like that. That chapter does have a lot of big plot reveals, but the reason why I was okay with treating it like the way I did was because, let's be honest, it's really hard to take the I am your father plot twist seriously these days, so yeah, I couldn't really take that one seriously, and I didn't really feel bad for undercutting it. Also, regarding the way I've been treating Valadar throughout this series, I have basically turned him into a total joke. There is a good reason for that, and I'll discuss that more when I actually do my run of the next chapter. And that's all I'll say for now. So, that should be everything that I wanted to just get out of the way for this. I apologize if I ruined one of the most dramatic scenes in the game for you. I just kind of assumed that most people watching these videos would already have been familiar with that scene, so I wanted to offer a different interpretation, but I just didn't take into account just how many people would have not seen that before, and I admit if your first exposure to that scene is through what I did, it's really not the best. So I encourage you all to look up that scene without any commentary at all. While we're here, though, there are a few more things that I wanted to talk about regarding that scene itself that that video would have gone on way too long if I had actually put them there, so now seems like an alright time to actually discuss this. So, here we go, a few things that I wanted to talk about. Firstly, the music. Now, me recording that scene was the first time I had ever heard that theme. I have it on the soundtrack, I'd listened to the very beginning of it, but I had not heard the full crescendo of the music, and that music is really, really moving. Even in the version of the scene that I did, I still was... That music still really got me, so... Really, to me, who's never really seen much emotional value in this scene, the music is really the only thing that makes it for me. That music is really the only reason I find this scene so emotional now, and... I'm okay with that. It's a fantastic piece of music, and I really, really love it. The second thing I want to talk about regarding that scene is the choice that you have to make. Accept Lucina's judgment, yes or no. Now, some people are annoyed that that choice does not affect anything in terms of gameplay. Regardless of what you choose, both characters survive, and Crom makes everything fine again. Now, this might be a bit of a controversial opinion, but to me personally, the fact that choice doesn't affect anything in gameplay makes it all the more powerful to me. It harkens back to a choice you have to make in the final case of Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Justice for All. The last case, and I don't want to talk about it because it's a huge spoiler. I do not want to spoil that case for anybody here because that case is one of the most brilliant pieces of storytelling to ever come out of a video game, so please, 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 I highly recommend you check out Farewell My Turnabout. It is amazing. But for people who have played that, you will know what choice I'm referring to. There's a moment where you have to make a very, very hard decision. Now, that decision does not affect anything in terms of gameplay. Regardless of which option you choose, the trial proceeds as normal and, it doesn't really affect anything. But later on, a character comments that even though your choice there didn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things, what it did mean was that choice said something about what kind of person you are. And to me, that's the kind of feeling I get from this choice here as well. There are a lot of games these days that put a lot of emphasis on your choices determine everything. I mean, even Fate is going that route. And it's in a lot of Western RPGs. It's a very Western RPG kind of thing where it's like, you make these big choices and they have huge sweeping effects, so it really makes these choices all the more powerful. To me, though, I've always felt that whenever there's a direct gameplay benefit tied to one of the options in a choice, you're not making that choice for moral reasons. You're making that choice for gameplay purposes. Once you know the gameplay effects of that choice, you basically say, You look at this choice and don't say, I'll choose this because that's what I choose in real life. You say, I'll choose this because it gives me +5 good points and I'm going for the good karma ending on this playthrough. Or, I choose this because it gives me access to this party member who I want later. Or, I choose this because it affects the story in a way that keeps this character alive and I like this character in my party in battle. The choice is tainted by things like that, by those gameplay concerns. You're no longer making an actual moral choice. You're making a choice that pertains mostly to gameplay. I even find that a choice at the very end of this game, Fire Emblem Awakening, falls into that trap. There's a very big choice in the ending of the game that I'll cover when we get to it. But the thing is, there is absolutely no reason to not choose a certain option, because if you choose the other option, you basically get a heavily cut down ending, and you don't actually see the full ending of the game, really. So, there's absolutely no negative repercussions to choosing the other choice, and so there's no reason not to choose it. And so it suffers from that. This choice, though, to me, the fact that it doesn't affect anything in gameplay means that you really make this choice based on, if I was in the Avatar's shoes, what would I choose here? Would I sacrifice myself for the good of the world? Or would I refuse and try and find another way? Now, you heard me justify the choice that I like going with in my actual commentary over the second version of that scene that I recorded. Basically, my rationalization was that if the Avatar chose to accept Lucina's judgment and it was just them, I'd be fine with that. But when they're married and have children, just throwing their own life away when they, again, have a spouse and children who would have no idea why they died and would suddenly be deprived of a family member, to me, that choice doesn't feel selfless at all. It actually feels kind of selfish because you're not being considerate of your family, you're just hurting them. I'm reminded of Ike's speech, well, originally Grail's speech, but Ike repurposes it at the end of Path of Radiance, where he says a line, if you don't want to cause grief to your family, then live. It's a really powerful speech, that one, and it really sums up just why Fire Emblem has such an emotional value to me. All the characters in your army, they all have families and friends, and because of that, you, the player, make an extra effort to keep them alive. You make sure they see this war through, and they get to the end alive so they can go home to their families, and they don't have to cause anyone grief. That is part of why I play Fire Emblem, and part of why it appeals to me so much, and part of why I always restart when I lose a character. I cannot bear myself to have anybody listed as dead in the epilogue. That just kills me, so because of that, that's the way I play these games, and so choosing not to sacrifice yourself there really has a lot of impact to me. But other people might see it a different way, and that's the beauty of these kind of choices. Choices that don't have any gameplay effects, because they really show what kind of a person you are. And I feel that they're actually a really important part of making a good, engaging game. These so-called meaningless choices. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents on the issue. Sorry if I was just rambling on a bit like that, almost, not quite philosophically, but just my thoughts on games in general and stuff like that. My opinions on choice in games in general are fairly controversial because I'm not actually a big fan of choice in games. I prefer a strictly linear narrative that doesn't change based on player input, and so yeah, that's why I think like that. But that's my relation to this particular choice, though. It feels more meaningful to me for the fact that it has no meaning as far as gameplay is concerned. Anyway, I'm sorry that you had to sit through this video. I had to get a few things off my chest, and the main playthrough will resume soon. Now, a warning, I unfortunately am now back at university, and because of that, I'm gonna have much less time to record and upload. So uploads might slow down to a rate of maybe 2 videos per week at most. I know that's kind of annoying, but that's the reason why I marathon through them so much in my uni break, to make sure that I got as many videos out there before I had to go back to uni again. Thankfully, I got a lot further ahead than I thought I would. I mean, I thought I'd be lucky if I even got past the end of Val before I had to go back to uni, and I'm now I'm now already starting into the 3rd arc and recruited all of the children. So there isn't actually very much in this game left to go. There's only the next few chapters of the main story, up until chapter 25. Then I'll be covering all of the Spot Pass paralogue chapters. Some of those may take a while, because I might actually have to grind a bit for them, especially given how many characters that I'm using, because I still want to give everyone equal screen time, but everyone basically needs to be level 20 for those, so I'm going to need to do a bit of grinding for those. So I'll do those, and then the final chapter, and then one set of DLC maps that I'm sure most of you already know what they are. I felt I had to do these DLC maps because they're the only ones that really directly tie into the story of this game. So that's what you can look forward to in the future. So I'll see you guys next time with Chapter 23.